Hi, my name is Mark Rouleau. I'm one of the mathematics consultants in the Learning Success Center at Wachusett Community College. In this video, I am going to give you an introduction to using the spreadsheet software Excel, which often comes in handy for your statistics classes.
You may already have Excel on your computer. I believe there are different versions of Excel for PCs, Macs, and Chromebooks. This video will show using Excel on a PC. Some features and instructions may be different for Macs and Chromebooks. If you are an MWCC student and you do not already have Excel on your computer, you can download Office 365, which includes Excel for free. Click on the link for Download Office 365 on the right-hand side of the main page after you've logged into iConnect, and find the button that says to install Office. After you've installed Excel, open it up, either double-clicking on the shortcut on your desktop or finding it in your programs. Select Blank Workbook. Now, if my project is small, I'll use the zoom in keys here on the bottom right corner to bring the grid in closer. You should see a large grid of rectangles. Each rectangle is called a cell, and each cell's address can be identified by the column and row it is in. This cell, for example, is C2 because it is in column C in row 2. Cells in Excel can contain texts, numbers, or formulas, and they can be linked to other cells. Excel is quite a powerful tool. Whole courses are available on it, including at MWCC, and I would encourage anyone who is interested to take this course. Here's one application. Let's say I want to figure out how much money I make each day at a job. First, I recommend using labels in your spreadsheet so you don't get confused later on. Let's say this column is for the date, this column for the number of hours. Make this column my pay rate, and this one will be my gross pay before taxes. Alright, let's say I worked on January 2nd. I'll put 1-2, enter, and Excel recognizes this as a date. Now, if I wanted to create the fraction 1/2, I have to format the cell so that Excel knows that I am putting in a fraction and not a date. I could do that, for example, I've clicked on a separate cell, right mouse click, come down to Format Cells, brings up a new menu, click on Fraction, some options here. Now if I enter in 1/2, it's recognized as a fraction. But I really wanted a date, so I didn't have to do anything. Let's say I worked 5 hours that day, and I get $14 an hour. I can have Excel do the calculation for my pay, which is the number of hours times the rate, or 5 times 14. The multiplication sign on the computer looks like an asterisk, and on most keyboards it's going to be Shift 8, or if you have a keypad on your keyboard, the asterisk, at least on mine, is above the number 9. So in this cell, what happens if I put in 5 times 14, enter? Well, Excel just thinks this is some text box. If I want to do a calculation, I have to tell Excel this is a calculation by first putting in an equal sign. Now, if I put in 5 times 14, enter, it does the calculation, which is 70. So far, so good. But what if I really worked 6 hours that day? I'll change the 6 here, but this 70 didn't change because my formula just said 5 times 14. When you are making a formula, it's usually better to use a cell's address when making these calculations. I do that this way. I'll start by equals, and now I'm going to give the address of the cell, which is C3. I can either click on it, like I just did, times, or I can type it in, D3, now enter. So instead of 6 times 14, it's just going to grab the number in that cell, grab the number in this cell, multiply them together. And if I change this back to 5, the pay will go down to 70. Let's say I worked the next 3 days. And I worked these hours. And let's say the pay is also the same. I can copy a formula. I usually do the shortcut Control C. And now I can select the cells underneath it either by holding Shift and then using the arrow, down arrow, or I could also take the mouse, click and hold and drag to select the cells I want to copy down to. Now it's Control V for paste, and this formula has been copied down, but as the formula was copied down, it is now grabbing the appropriate cells. So this formula in E3 says we're going to multiply C3 and D3. If I go down to E4, now it says C4 times D4, and so on. All right, I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to delete this column. I've just right mouse clicked on the top of the column, and I'm going to click delete because let's say my pay rate is always the same, $14. All right, now I'm going to do equals C3 times C9, and I get my number. Now I'm going to copy that formula and paste it down, and I get a bunch of zeros. Why did that happen? Because as I copied this formula down, C3 times C9, as I go down, it's looking for the next number down here, which is C4. That was right, but it's looking for a number in C10, and there's nothing there. So that's interpreted as a 0. I can look for a specific cell by anchoring my formula by putting in a $sign between the letter, the column letter, and the row number. So here it's $9, which means look for that exact cell. I'm going to copy that formula, paste it down, and there's, again, my daily pay. What if I want to know what is the average pay for these 4 days' work? Average pay. And notice that the words overflowed the width of this rectangle. I can resize the column by coming up to the top and clicking and dragging as a left mouse click. There are many functions built into Excel. Many dozens, maybe hundreds of them. And a lot of these are going to be useful in your statistics class. To use the function, you need to know the name of the function, but we're going to start off again with the equal sign. The average, which is also called a mean, the function is just called average. So I start typing a few letters and I see all of those functions that start with these letters, and when I find the one I want, I can double click. Each function requires a certain format, including very specific punctuation, and if you look underneath, sometimes you get the little hint on how the functions should be formatted. For example, I could take the average of two numbers. I'll click on one of these numbers, and then I comma, and then the next one, and I'll take the average of those two numbers. If I want an average of a range, I can either click the top of the range, click and hold, and drag all the way to the bottom, or I can type it in the top cell with a colon and then the bottom cell. And here I can put in a end parentheses, but Excel knows if you don't put it in, that's what you mean. Let's look at an example from the homework. In a lot of homework questions, you are given a list of data, and you are asked to answer questions about the data. So when they give you the data, you might see these little rectangles next to the numbers. Click on that, and let's open in Excel. Here is the file here on the bottom. We'll click on that to open it. All right. You may have to allow pop-ups. So when the file opens, it is in a protected mode. We have to enable editing, enable to do any work on it. And I'll zoom in on that a little bit as well. If you're doing any frequency distributions, it may be useful to organize the data from smallest to largest. And you can do that. There's a button over here for sort and filter, and click smallest to largest. We only have one column, so Excel will just organize that data. You may be asked for the mean of the data. That's the average. We did that already. Let's do that again. That's equals average. Double click. I'm going to select. I can go from bottom to the top. It's fine. And there's our mean. Now, what if they were asking you about standard deviation? If you haven't covered standard deviation yet, it's a value that describes how data is distributed from the mean. There are several formulas for standard deviation depending on how the data is presented. For example, you could be given data as a frequency distribution, as a discrete random variable, as a binomial distribution, or as raw data like we have here. But then again, that can either be a sample or a population. Let's consider the formula for a sample standard deviation for raw data and break down what it all means. The formula says S equals the square root of sigma. This is capital sigma, which means the sum of x minus x bar. X bar is a sample mean, so x minus x bar squared, and then we're going to add those all up, that's by the sigma there, divided by n minus 1. So, come back to Excel. I'm going to add a row here by, first I clicked on the number 1 on the left hand side. I'm going to right mouse click, and I'm going to insert, and that's going to insert the row. So all these numbers in this column, there are 10 of them. These are all the values of our sample. Those are all the x's. And I'm going to make a column for x minus x bar. I'll just type in x bar. And x bar was a sample mean we already got down here. That was our mean. So I'm going to come back to what we did last time. I'm going to say equals this number minus this number, but I'm going to put the dollar sign in there to anchor to that cell. I'm going to copy that formula and paste it all the way down. Notice some of the numbers are negative and some are positive. That is to be expected for this column. Now we need an x minus x bar squared. To square a number, you have to put in this little we call it a caret, looks like a little arrowhead, and that's a shift 6, and the square number is to raise it to a second power. And now to do that, I'm going to make a formula that says equals, I'm going to grab this number, shift 6, and 2, enter. Copy that formula, Control C, highlight the cells underneath it, and paste, Control V. Alright, what does the formula say? We have to take the x minus x bar squared column and add up all those numbers. The function that does that is just called sum, S-U-M. If I double click and highlight the cells I want to add up, there that is. According to the formula, I have to divide this number by n minus 1. N is the sample size. There were 10 in the sample, so 10 minus 1 is 9. I can say equals, grab that number, divide by 9, equals, or enter. And then finally I have to take the square root of this number, and I usually do that by raising the number to a half power, 0.5, but there's also a square root function. It's SQRT. Click on the number you want and see it's the same. And that is our sample standard deviation for this data. This is much easier to do with Excel than to do by hand, though I usually like to recommend to students that they do it by hand a few times. And there is a possibility of kind of combining some of these steps together as one. But there's one more trick. Standard deviation is also a built-in function. And if I type in equals and start typing STD, and I see there's a few standard deviation functions here. Since this was a sample, we'll choose the standard deviation.s, standard deviation.p for population. So I'm going to click on the function, highlight the data we want, and there it is, same number. There's a few other functions that will be useful in statistics class. For example, there's one for mode. We start equals and mode. Looks like there are a few different modes. If I highlight the range and do the mode function, we see actually there is no mode because none of the data values repeat. Median is available. If I highlight the data, we get the median. There's a function for quartile. This time I have to highlight the data. Now by the little hint underneath, I have to put a comma and say which quartile I want, 1, 2, or 3. So the first quartile would be 1. I can find the second quartile, which is the same as the median. So select the data, comma, 2, enter. So that's actually the same as our median. That's good. Variance is another thing you might be asked, VAR, and that's also a .p for population and a .s for sample. And there are many more. Your instructor may show you some of the other functions that are available for Excel. Let us know if there is anything in this video that could be made clearer for a future update, and let us know if there are other videos you would like to see in this series.
As always, we encourage you to check out our website, which includes our schedule, or email call, or drop in to find out about our consulting options. Good luck, and I hope to see you this semester in the Learning Success Center.